Welcome to Kara's Cures, where we explore the leading edge of wellness. I'm Kara Sundlun. Are you tired of feeling tired? The hustle and bustle of the holidays might have you feeling depleted right about now. Naturopathic Dr. Artemis Morris is here now to talk about adrenal fatigue and what that is and how we can treat it so we can get our energy back. Welcome, doctor.
Thank you, Kara. Always a pleasure to be here.
So, many people might not have heard of this. What is adrenal fatigue?
Adrenal fatigue is a combination of symptoms that are due to our body's normal physiological stress response going out of balance. So it's usually that chronic daily stress that affects it and leads to these combination of symptoms that collectively are called adrenal fatigue.
And so you might have things like feeling tired all the time, but also mood changes like anxiety or even feeling a little depressed, or maybe you're having trouble sleeping.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's usually a combination. So because our normal stress response, it helps us to gear up and fight or flee. And so when that goes on, what can happen is we get wired but tired, where it's hard to fall asleep, but we're stressed out and we're overtired, And then there's also the effects on the metabolism. There's effects on our moods, it's anxiety, depression, aches and pains. These are all poor memory. These are all part of this constellation of symptoms.
And, especially for women who are battling, maybe they're taking care of kids and they're also working and all the holidays. You say another symptom is difficulty losing weight. I know a lot of people around my age in their 40s saying, why is it that I'm watching everything and I'm not losing anything? That can also be a symptom of adrenal fatigue.
Absolutely. So in evolution, it makes evolutionary sense that when we're stressed out, when we're tired, when our system is depleted, for us to want to hold on to our calories and our weight. And so that's what happens in the body physiologically as mediated by some of the stress hormones, including one produced by the adrenal gland called cortisol. So it definitely leads to that weight gain around the middle and can slow down the metabolism.
So how do you know if you have adrenal fatigue?
It's really tricky. You really would have to get diagnosed by a integrative naturopathic or functional practitioner because there's no definitive test for it. There is a test that helps to indicate where you are on that stress response. And that would be testing something like cortisol, testing even a hormone called DHEA sulfate. And so we get a picture. There are some ways of testing, but it really is kind of similar to a lot of the autoimmune disorders, just a constellation of symptoms put together that gives us an indication of where you are in terms of adrenal stress.
And you said sometimes people crave salt, and that's because they have a mineral imbalance?
Yes, it's one of the questions I like to ask to get an indication of where someone might be on this stress response is, do they crave salt? Because a lot of the time it's actually, well, it could be because of a deficiency in their diet, but it also could be because the adrenal glands, the glands that sit on top of our kidneys, they're responsible for cortisol balance, but they also have a part of it that's responsible for mineral balance that ties into blood pressure too. So that the mineral balance can get offset, our need for B vitamins, our need for certain nutrients are affected by that stressing of the adrenals because we're under a lot of, stress, perceived stress.
So what are we going to do about this? Because I would say, in fact, I was just talking with Lauren, our meteorologist, and talking about, she's got a little kid at home, a toddler, she's working full time. I mean, it's, I think, hard for people to say, well, what am I supposed to do about it? Because yes, I'm tired, but I have to keep pushing through.
Right. And I think that is the lesson of this diagnosis. That's the lesson of how our body responds to chronic daily stress. Is the hardest bullet point on the recommendation list is to really become aware of when we're pushing ourselves beyond our control. And, I think it's the hardest thing to do when you are a busy parent or, someone who's working 2 jobs or doing so much or taking care of a loved one. And you now have holidays, you got to go shopping, you've got to do the cooking. what it does is it pushes us beyond. So the biggest thing to do, the most important one, is to become aware of when we're pushing ourselves and see if we can just take a moment then to take a step back. For me, I love doing like a little tea time, a little deep breathing. So number one is to take a break, because that will help to not push your adrenals past that point that really leads to an offset of all the other hormonal systems, of the immune system, of inflammation, this cascade of negative effects on our body.
Yeah, and right now we're showing on the screen exactly how you can treat adrenal fatigue. And you mentioned taking a break. The next thing is rest. I assume you mean sleeping at night, which can be tough if you're having problems sleeping.
Yes, and that's why I use the term rest rather than sleep, because sleep is absolutely, essential. And it's essential to our immune system. It's essential to our stress response, our ability to recuperate from all of the stressors of the day. And ideally, we want to get 7 to 8 hours a night. But if you can't fall asleep, and there are many different things, that's another program that we can do naturally for sleep. But you can also just breathe, you can do meditation, you can do prayer, you could just try to take as much time as you can, especially when you're in this stressed out state where you've wired but tired and aches and pains, where you can actually rest your body. So if you can't fall asleep, think about like maybe just, do some deep breathing, get some of the apps out there.
Don't just start scrolling your phone or watch a movie.
That would make it worse, even though that is very tempting. And, but the blue lights. And so, yeah, it'd be good to do some deep breathing, get a cup of tea maybe, or use that time to pray or to take stock in a way that feels calming.
Yeah, and I want to put the graphic back up on the screen so we can see. The next thing is eating well. And a lot of people might think that they're eating, decently, but what specifically would aggravate our adrenals and our stress if we're having too much of it?
So the biggest thing is to get enough nutrients in. And so our body requires vitamins and minerals in order to function at its best. We talked a lot about the foundational four in regards to the immune system. So, the reason why there's a multi of fish oil, a vitamin D, and a probiotic is those are the things you want to maximize in your diet. So to get, the whole color of rainbows of veggies, this is a great time for root vegetables, sweet potatoes, bone broths, for carrots, so you want to get a lot of vitamin C, B vitamins, a lot of these nutrients. And if you're eating more sugar, and processed food, that is going to increase inflammation and actually make you more sensitive to the negative effects of our adrenals going off. So, be careful about caffeine. A little caffeine is fine for most people. If it's not good for you, then avoid it completely. But what happens is it stresses our adrenals. It gives us that quick pick me up. But then over time, I call it credit card energy. Actually, I coined that from a colleague of mine. And over time, it's going to make those adrenals even more stressed. It's going to affect your cortisol even more, where you're, going too high, and it might help you to crash. So watching your sugars, watching caffeine, and incorporating a lot of foods high in B vitamins and vitamin C and magnesium.
What would we do if, let's say you're at work and you're like, I need that coffee. It's 3, 4 o'clock. I'm not making it unless I do the coffee. If you want to try and not stress your adrenals, what could you do instead? What should you eat or do at that time of day when people are experiencing that crash and they do have to kind of finish their job and go pick up the kids?
Yes. And a lot of times it's because our mind needs it, right? We're so stressed out on an emotional level. We need something as well as on a physical level. So green tea actually works as it works like an adrenal adaptogen. It has L-theanine in it. It has a little caffeine. So green tea is actually a nice substitute for coffee, and you could do green tea chai, and that will work to give you that little pick me up. That's one you could do. Even some of the black teas, if you're not super sensitive, but the green tea is definitely more medicinal. And then if you want a little piece of dark chocolate or something, as long as it's high amounts. But if you really want to treat the cause, you can do things like the adrenal adaptogenic herbs. And there's a number of herbs like ashwagandha and holy basil. So those are other things you can do at that mid-morning pick-me-up that will help, or Panax ginseng, to really sustain you into the evening in a way that's not going to keep you up at night, right? That's the challenge.
Right, right. And we'll put that graphic up just one more time so we can see some of the other things. So you mentioned the adrenal adaptogens. That's what you're talking about with herbal supplements. We'll have to be careful and talk a little bit more about that with you, because I know you want to make sure people are taking what's right for them, not just what they read online. And movement. Now, a lot of people are saying, I don't have time to exercise. You don't mean that we have to go to the gym and go really work out hard. In fact, maybe we shouldn't be doing that if we have adrenal fatigue.
Yeah, everyone has the right amount of everything that's right for them. And that's the hallmark of true, holistic medicine, is personalizing. So again, starting with your awareness of yourself, kind of understanding what you need. And so with movement, it's the same thing. Some people are going to really benefit from like going to the gym and working out hard, and they might get energized for that. Best to do that more in the morning. At night, it could energize us a little too much. But, even if you have 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, don't feel like you have to I have to make 30 to 45 minutes. I think even for me, one of the breakthroughs for me in looking at movement and exercise was I don't have to be top of my game to start. I could just go for a 5-minute walk. I could do 10 push-ups. I could do a few sit-ups or a little bit of yoga, deep breathing. You can, just even a small amount can go pretty far in helping with this syndrome.
So if you do these things, can you heal the adrenals? And how do you know if you've done that?
So you can absolutely heal from adrenal fatigue. And when it's not treated, when you are stressing yourselves out, when you're burning the candle at both ends, when you're not sleeping well, not eating well, then what can happen is the progression of the effects of stress on our body, which are responsible for 90% of illnesses, is that it could lead to some disorders that are diagnosed by endocrinologists. Too high cortisol, when we're kind of super wired because we're always on, that would be something like Cushing's syndrome. Too low, this is when we crash out because we're really pushing it, is something called adrenal insufficiency or Addison. So those are if you keep going, cortisol affects all of the systems of our body, our reproductive system, it affects our nervous system, it affects our cardiovascular system, it affects inflammation. So virtually every system of our body is responding to stress. And that's why we want to really just kind of pull it back as much as we can.
So some people may be on other medications, especially if they've really been, with the pandemic, struggling with depression and anxiety. Maybe they've started taking an SSRI, or they're doing something for, their doctors put them on some sort of a mood stabilizer or a low dose antidepressant to treat those symptoms. If you want to do some of these things you're talking about, like take herbs or even all the fish oils, is that okay to do if you're on other medications?
There are certain herbs and supplements that are contraindicated with certain medications. And that's why I do really push for people to go to a naturopathic doctor, go to an integrative practitioner, go to someone who really understands herbs and supplements, who's studied herbs and supplements. Like naturopathic doctors are the only general practice trained physicians that learn herbal medicine and nutrition, and that's why I took that route. But you want to go to someone to make sure they don't interact with your medication, especially any kind of mood altering. But there are many different safe things you can do, and I can mention some of those that are very safe, like the fish oil, the probiotics, and a good multi. And then we have some herbs that are really safe to use that don't have a lot of contraindications that I can mention today for your viewers, that they could use as a tea and do safely to help that stress response. But eating well, resting, movement, taking a break, there's no interactions there. And you can treat adrenal fatigue. You can treat some of those depression, anxiety naturally as well, if you wanted to talk about that.
Yeah, and that might be a whole separate. If you're not on anything, then even doing these things might lift your. But for people who are on their medications, maybe they can't come off. If they want to pick up, maybe something that's going to help them a little bit, to support what they're doing, which ones would be okay?
So some of my favorites, and green tea is one of them,
Yep.
which is like, if you're sensitive to caffeine, maybe be careful with that. But there's some great teas out there. Like this one I like. It has Tulsi. Tulsi is the name for holy basil, and it's an Ayurvedic herb. Roses even can help calm the nervous system, but adrenal adaptogens, like, things to calm our nervous system, like chamomile. But there's also herbs like ashwagandha, which is Withania somnifera is the Latin name. It's a herb used in India for thousands of years. And traditionally, you can get like the powdered root and mix it in like a non-dairy milk and make a calming tea at night. So those are definitely safe to do. Even some of the ginsengs, like you can do as a tea. When you do things as teas and in food, it's very safe. So you can add ginger, even some of the mushrooms, some of the maitake have that adrenal adaptogenic response, which basically helps to resilience.
Does that mean you should have it more in the tea form if you are on other medications versus the herbal pills that you can, ashwagandha is everywhere now. You can get it at Whole Foods. I know you prescribe it sometimes. Should you not be taking the pill form until you talk to a doctor?
Well, it's tricky. If you have a naturopathic doctor you're seeing or an integrated practitioner, ask them about it to find out what form, because it's not just about, oh, here's the herb, what form, what dose is right for you. But ashwagandha is generally safe if you can find a really good quality of ashwagandha, a tincture, a tea. But in general, teas are going to be the safest route if you don't have someone to consult with.
Yeah.
And then you can go up higher.
And I know that you're here in Connecticut, so we should say that shout out your website so that folks can get in touch with you if they want to call you. And I know you see people via telehealth, so you don't even have to be in Connecticut if you're watching this somewhere else. But tell us how people can reach you.
Absolutely. So I have Artemis Wellness Center in Milford, Artemis Wellness Center. And then my other website is drartemis.com, drartemis.com. And I'm looking at doing more on that for Mediterranean nutrition and ways that we can help ourselves, because there's a lot we can do to empower ourselves. And I think the hardest part is to really notice when we're stressed out and to give ourselves a break, take a break, take a cup of tea.
And I think it's important for people to know that it's a real thing, and that if you're noticing that you're just tired all the time, which I hear from so many people, I'm just tired all the time, to pay attention to that and to mention it to your doctor, to see someone like you, because you don't have to live that way.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot we can do. And then with the adrenal adaptogens, there's different ones for different stages of stress. So we can definitely talk about that too.
Well, Dr. Artemis, thank you so much for being here. You're a wealth of knowledge as always. And I should tell our audience I've got my vitamins from you. I even got my adaptogens. I do think it helps me. I'm still living my busy life. I could probably learn how to slow down a little bit more, but I'm doing what I can, and I do think it makes a difference. So I wanted to share the information with others.
Thank you, Kara. This is really great to bring awareness here. And yeah, you're doing great. So we'll keep it going. Take our breaks whenever we can, right?
Absolutely. And for more information, if you want to look at what Dr. Artemis offers or check out some of her supplements and get in touch with her, you can always visit her at drartemis.com. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
And for more Kara's Cures, you can watch them right here on the Channel 3 app, or I also post them on my social media channels. So follow me there at Kara Sundlun.